Hello and welcome to training tape number 4 for the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance in basketball. We are at the end of the regular season here in Wisconsin. Postseason for girls starts this week. Postseason for boys next week. We're going to just look at a bunch of different plays here to kind of round out the season. Some general reminders for you as we get rolling through into the playoffs. As always, we have our disclaimers here. The training tape is a product of the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance. This does not reflect any instructions specifically given by the WIAA or the NFHS or any state association. The training is to be used for 3-person officiating crews at the high school level. Clips may be used from college basketball games, but will always relate back to high school mechanics and rules. And no video or comment is ever meant to call out or degrade players, coaches, officials, or teams in any ways. We are using these for learning purposes only. My name is Cade Murray. I'm the officials training coordinator for the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email is there for you on the screen. So our first clip that we're going to look at here is giving us more of a reminder of how illegal contact can occur. And it does not always occur by players having their hands down or stepping into the path of the ball handler or shooter as a secondary defender. We see here we have a primary defender who initially establishes position as a legal defender, and then as the drive goes, she is beat, and then as the player goes to attempt for a shot, while having her hands up, moves into the path of the ball handler. These are fouls in which we want to get, especially on shots like this where we have a player go to the floor. Especially in some games where players are hitting the floor a lot. When there's illegal contact, we want to get it. In this case, that's what we have here. You'll see here that as that player goes up for the shot, we have that player who, while she has her hands up, is moving into her path and bumps her off as she goes for the shot. We see Black 44 sliding in as a secondary defender and does not appear to give any illegal contact, but we see that primary defender go through and bump her. We want this call to come from trail. This play originates in the trail's primary, and then the primary defender is Black number 4, and that is his defender in this case, in which he should take to the rim. Especially in plays like this where we have players hitting the floor in this circumstance, these are plays that we want to get. Coaches may not like it because they do have their hands up there, but we have to understand that we are not allowed as defenders to move into ball handlers or shooters, and that's the circumstance that we have here. So this is a little bit longer of a clip here, but this is as it relates to time and our management with this. We need to make sure that we are, especially here in the playoffs, having definitive knowledge of the game clock. And we see that we play out a almost 20-second possession here in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We see that there is no time being taken off the clock. So essentially, we have almost 20 seconds in which we have no officials recognize that the clock has not started, especially in situations where the game is a little bit closer down the wire. We want to make sure that we have our eyes on the clock. However, with that being said as well, this is something that we should always have in mind. Whenever the ball goes into play, making sure that the clock starts is very important. This is especially apparent for officials in which they do not have an initial competitive matchup. So the lead here in this case should really have their eyes on the clock. Because that is the only thing that they could possibly be looking at to start this play with not having any competitive matchups in their primary. If we don't catch these and we're not sure how much time comes off the clock, this becomes a little bit inexcusable. So obviously, no one in the gym noticed, no one's yelling or anything like that, but we need to make sure that as officials we're always monitoring the clock, making sure that it's stopping and starting on time. Because if we don't, then we open up a can of worms in terms of trying to figure out how much time we should or should not take off the clock. And it's something that we want to make sure that we get right as officials. This next play that I want to talk about has to do with press coverage in transition. We see a play here in the backcourt in which we have the defense pressuring, and we have a block charge scenario here. A couple things with this play. First off, we like the Trail's position here to start. They're in the best angle that they can be to effectively officiate this play. Center is in good initial position, but one thing that I want to talk about as it relates to backcourt pressure is center being engaged. Often with backcourt pressure, and especially as it relates to when we have transition, stuff like that, our center is going to be really pivotal in making sure that we get these calls correctly made. So as we watch this play, we could probably infer about whether we have a block or a charge personally. We see the defender here have position and doesn't, from this camera angle, seem to constitute a blocking foul. However, we don't have this official's point of view. My point is that if center can be engaged here, they might be able to have an opinion on this play, especially if we have something really fast go up the sideline that might catch the Trail off guard. Center being engaged in this play can really help us get an accurate ruling on this particular play in general. So while yes, Trail having a whistle is not a bad thing, we always want to make sure that in these types of plays our center is engaged and focused in able to have an opinion on plays like these in the case that we have a no call or something erroneous that maybe gets caught off guard by the Trail official, especially when we have instant trapping that some of these teams will do in the backcourt pressure, like we're seeing from this team in white here. Next thing I want to talk about is touching on screens and contact in general. So we're looking at this play right here, black 12. I'm going to let loop through as I talk a little bit about this play. As it relates to contact, whether it's hand checking, whether it's contact around the basket, or whether it is screening, when we're early in the game, we set a line and we have to stick to it. And so when we set a line that maybe has a little bit more minimal contact, then we need to continue to call that minimal contact because that is what we set that tone at the beginning of the game. Now there are one-off instances, of course, but this is generally speaking. So we see here on screens, as it directly relates to screen, we see black 12 kind of wall up here, move a little bit, not really throw white 23 off of his path or anything like that. Definitely not the most legal screen in the world, but definitely not the most illegal either. Yes, there is some illegal contact that occurs, but we see white 23 get through it just fine. It doesn't really seem to create any sort of competitive advantage. These are ones that we maybe want to use our voice and communicate, hey, stay set on your screens or talk to the coach. But when we call one like this that's a little bit lighter in contact, then we basically have set the tone of we need to call all of these screens as legal screens. And especially in some of these boys games where they can play through a little bit more and these screens aren't as impactful, that can be really detrimental and really kill the flow in the game that you have, especially in a playoff game. So be patient on these. Get the obvious ones out the gate. Set that bar at that point where we're going to get the obvious screens. We're watching the screens, but at the same time, we don't want to get anything that's not totally, creating a super big competitive advantage. Use our voice when we can in situations like these. All these are extremely important in order for us to, set a good tone for the game in general. So this next play that we're going to look at is relating to context of game and knowing our game scenarios. We're going to see a play here where we're in an obvious fouling situation in which teams are going to be fouling to try and stop the clock and get the basketball back. And we see the Trail official go up right here and call an intentional foul. Some things to note. As it relates to these scenarios, the ones that we get that are intentional fouls need to be ones that are truly intentional, as in truly not playing the ball, potential harm. Those sorts of things are the ones that we want to get as intentionals. In this scenario, everyone in the gym knows what they're trying to do. And while maybe you can be supported by rule on this play on its own, with the context of the game, these are fouls that we do not really want to be calling intentionals. You can if you can get it into a category, that is where you are going to be really safe. And right here, you can say that she has 2 hands on the ball handler. As fouls like these, upgrading these to intentionals really doesn't, it's not something that we need to be doing, especially in playoff games, close games like this. Doing that when teams do that all the time, all over, that is something in which we do not need to be doing. Go with the common foul. No one's going to say anything, and we're going to be just fine moving forward. So make sure we're really staying off of these as it relates to intentional, unless we truly have a play that's really going to potentially harm a player or is a clear non-play on the ball. But again, in this case, just a quick little 2 hands on the ball handler. We know what she's trying to do. Let's not go outside of the realm of basketball and seeing all these different things. We see these all the time. Let's not go through and try and turn this into something that we don't need to turn it into. So this clip goes back and talks to us again about positioning and getting an illegal contact. Now in this case, we have a situation where we have a secondary defender come in, and while the player here sort of goes off balance and goes down, the lead does a good job of not penalizing legal defense. You're going to see size mismatches. Certainly if you have this team in white, you're going to see this kid and there's going to be a size mismatch. And how are you going to officiate those? And it's really important that we don't penalize any contact that is legal or offense initiated. We see the offensive player dribble into the lane, go at this player, and we see that he's clearly trying to draw a foul by going up and initiating some contact, but we see that the secondary defender here does nothing wrong. And while this player does go down, this has to do with a little bit of, again, that size mismatch. So it's a really good job by the lead of being patient, watching this the whole way through, realizing that there's no illegal contact here and laying this play on. These are things that we want to see out of our officials, because this is extremely pivotal that we don't penalize contact in which it's legal and we have legal defenders or offense initiated into legal defenders. Here's another play. Again, same type of deal. We have a player go through and dribble in, and we have a player who's walled up, and then the offense goes through, initiates, and we get a foul called on the defender. Again, we need to ask ourselves, what's the defender doing wrong here? Yes, there's contact. However, we see that the defender is walled up, offense goes in, kind of initiates into this legal defender, and then we end up calling a foul on the defense. Again, we don't want to penalize these types of plays. Yes, there are going to be awkward movements, players going to the floor. I know I said back earlier when we have a player going to the floor, we want to whistle on it, but that's when we have illegal contact. Here we have what is a legal defender and legal contact, and these are ones in where it's okay to have the offensive player go to the floor, especially if they're trying to drive in and initiate all of this. So again, be patient, slow yourself down, see these plays before we put air in the whistle. It's going to help you out tremendously in the long run. Here's another play where, again, we're looking at offense going in, initiating into a legal defender, and going down onto the floor. This is a good instance in which we do not reward the offense for initiating themselves into a legal defender. And we're talking about Black 5 as it relates to this. Again, good job of being patient. This time we see the play the whole way through, and we're able to correctly rule a no call in this case. Only takeaway we have from this play in general is that as lead, in this case, we don't need to shake our head, we don't need to put our hands out, anything like that to communicate that we have a no call. Us not putting air in the whistle is our communication that we have nothing, that we have a legal defender. We want to make sure that we avoid certain actions like this one that we see here. But again, good patience by the lead of seeing this the whole way through and not rewarding an offensive player for initiating contact into a legal defender. Very well done. Our last play that we have here is a situation where we want to talk about mechanics and coverage and responsibilities. We see the ball go out on the end line here. and we have out of bounds, and we have the trail blowing the whistle, and we're not totally sure what's going on here. Now, there are a few things that we can maybe infer from this. One, potentially the trail is calling a kickball. However, I would not call a kickball here because we don't really have any intentional kicking that occurs. If he is calling out of bounds here, this is not correct. We do not, as trail, ever want to call out of bounds on the end line under any circumstance. If the lead calls for help, that's where we have an opinion. Same thing as it goes for center. Having the right whistles on this and correctly putting the whistles on the correct lines that we are responsible for makes us look really, really sharp as a crew. But when we start blowing whistles on lines that aren't ours, that opens up the door for really bad things. So, know your responsibilities as a crew when it comes to this stuff, especially in playoffs. We don't want to be having these types of whistles that are not belonging to us. All right, that is going to wrap it up for today. I hope that you found this training tape series helpful as your season went on. You can see the respective associations that we have here. We are going to hopefully expand here for the next season. But until then, please feel free to reach out with questions. And I wish you the absolute best. Thank you all for your support. And I wish you a happy and healthy postseason and off season.